Hello and welcome back to my channel. Berlin versus New York. What the heck happened between those two races that prevented me from finishing one and rocking the other? Join me over the next couple of days as I walk Charlotte and rest from an amazing New York City marathon and reflect back on the pros and cons of both races and what worked and what didn't beforehand. What the hell happened between Berlin versus New York? What you doing? What you doing? You smell something? Come on. Come on. Let's go. There goes the crazy little girl. Bye. First things first, let's talk distance traveled to the race, because they were both 26.2. They were both full marathons and they were both the same distance. I did the same training for each one of them. So first things first, Berlin is an 8-hour flight to either Frankfurt or Munich, and then another hour-ish flight from there to Berlin. The time difference is about 6 hours. New York, it is a 3.5-hour train ride, and it's in the same time zone. When we traveled to Berlin, we left the Washington, D.C. area at about 5:30 p.m. and we did not get to Berlin until somewhere around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. So we had lost a whole night of sleep. I slept maybe half an hour in the Priority Pass Lounge in the Berlin airport, but also sleeping in public is terrible anyway. Once we got to Berlin, I had a great night's sleep on Friday night, but I had already lost a whole night of sleep. The Friday before the New York City Marathon, I got to sleep in my own bed because I took a 7 a.m. train from Washington Union Station up to New York Penn Station. So the difference was I was a little bit more comfortable for longer, and I got a good night's sleep the week before the New York City Marathon. Wow, almost fell over. Because New York is in the same time zone as Washington, D.C., my body knew what time it was. So automatically, I feel like I was able to adapt to the new surroundings a little bit better than adapting to a new hotel, adapting to a new city, and adapting to a new time zone. So I think that made it a little bit easier in New York than it did in Berlin, since I didn't miss a whole night of sleep. And I know from past experiences that I just don't do well when I am super, super exhausted. Now, the logistics of the start of the Berlin Marathon and getting to the start line of the New York Marathon are two completely different monsters. The Berlin Marathon is by far much, much easier. Their subway system is very easy to navigate. But with New York, you have two choices. You could either take the Midtown bus, which is what I decided on, and thank God, because I saw that people were missing their start waves because of the line in Staten Island after the ferry to get on the bus to go to Fort Wadsworth. For the Berlin Marathon, the subway is super easy. You can take the subway from anywhere. And from where we stayed, it was a quick mile walk to the start line. Not a lot of standing on my feet. Got to my corral and basically just sat down. In New York, it was a lot of standing in line, to stand in line, to stand in line some more. The expo in Berlin and the expo in New York City were both equally as far away from where I was staying. Both of them were about 2 miles-ish away, and it was definitely a little bit easier to get to the expo for the New York City Marathon just because I speak the language and I could get a lift from my hotel over to the expo. But in Berlin it wasn't terribly bad. I really wanted to walk to the expo on Friday night, but a friend of mine did not bring the right shoes, so she wanted to take a cab. It took us a little while in order to get a cab just because I'm not really sure, but it took us a while. With Lyft in the city, in New York City, it was super easy. I just tapped the app and somebody arrived. We do have Lyft Pink, so we do get priority discounted Lyft rides, but it was super easy to get over there. And I mean, it was super easy to get to the expo in Berlin too once we figured out the subway system. But the day that we got in, when we went to the expo, was not that day. It was not the day to try to figure out how to take the subway. We were exhausted.
Where are we going, Charlotte? Are we gonna go for a walkies? Walkies! She always looks so sad in the car.
So it's now Friday. It's Veterans Day for all of you Americans who are watching. It is November 11th. I still haven't run. I was supposed to go running this morning, but we are getting the remnants of Hurricane Nicole. So it was raining this morning and Melissa and I called it, which was probably a really good idea because I'm still feeling a little sore in my toes. Probably run at some point this weekend. But the second point is stress. The stress of having to finish in a certain amount of time when I felt like during training I got slower. Because I've run New York City before, I know that the cutoff time for the race is a suggested cutoff time. In Berlin, I've heard horror stories of the gate literally being closed on top of people while they're running towards it. A friend of mine actually told me a story about how the police officer who closed the gate at the Brandenburg gate looked at her, saw her coming, made direct eye contact, and pulled the gate in front of her. So the stress of not meeting the time specification, not meeting the cutoff time, on top of everything else, just really stressed me out. And I think that kind of put me into a mindset of, I'm going too slow, I'm not gonna make it. Where's your collar, sweetie? We've lost Charlotte's collar. Not this one. The one we had on the other day. Go find your collar. Go find it. Go find it, you little happy girl. So let's talk about my foot. My foot was really acting up when I went to Germany. I don't know what was going on with it, but I feel like maybe physical therapy was making it ache a little bit more than normal, or the fact that I was running a lot more volume before I went to Berlin and then just kind of coasting between Berlin and New York. But when I was in Berlin, my foot was just acting up. My plantar fasciitis or nerve or whatever you want to call it, it hurt really bad. And I feel like that kind of also played into the stress and anxiety of hitting the cutoff time. So when I came back, I actually went to the doctor and I was going to get a PRP injection. But I decided to wait for a little while. I had to wait a week anyway to get off the anti-inflammatories. And in that week, my foot just started feeling better and better and better. So I decided that I was going to try to go to New York. And with that, my foot just started feeling better. I bought a lacrosse ball and I was rolling my foot on the lacrosse ball and stretching a little bit more and using the massage gun a little bit more. So my recovery methods were a little bit better after I bonked in Berlin. So I guess you're wondering what is next for us. We joined a gym and we will be focusing a little bit more on strength. We are planning to work with a personal trainer at least a couple of times a month in order to sort of strengthen some of our weaker areas now that we are sort of coasting along in our training cycle. Then we also have the marathon weekend at Walt Disney World. Derek is doing the Goofy Challenge, which is the half marathon and the full marathon, and I am doing the Dopey Challenge, which is the 5K, 10K, half and full marathon, in case you guys are not familiar with those races. And then we put our name in for the New York City half. So we will be finding out about that, and I will be finding out about whether or not I got into Chicago for 2023. Now, if I didn't get into Chicago 2023, I am thinking about scrapping the idea of a marathon for next year and really trying to focus in on my half marathon time and getting a little bit stronger and perhaps losing some of this COVID weight, because let's be honest here, COVID was not lockdown, COVID, quarantine, whatever. The last 2.5 years was not really kind to anybody. But I, working from home, do not walk by far as much as I used to. I'm going to probably be starting to focus in on that in my off season starting in January and moving forward from there. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions for me regarding New York or Berlin, or any suggestions on a video that you would like me to make, I'm happy to do so. Just drop it down in the comments. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.